At the time of Section 28, I was 9 and I was a pupil in a small Catholic primary school in a kind of small village area outside, a kind of rural area outside of Glasgow. And when it was introduced, I didn't really hear anything about it. My family wasn't particularly political, and I wouldn't say it was something that I was even aware of. Being at a Catholic school, we didn't talk about sex education anyway. So even if it hadn't been there, I doubt very much I would have been taught anything about sexuality and relationships at that stage. But as far as I was concerned at that age, I knew that there was gay people, but I didn't know any. That was pretty much the entirety of my understanding of LGBT. Because I was never able to talk about, or we were never taught about different relationships, it had a huge impact on me as a young person, and I didn't realise until latterly, because I always assumed that I was straight. There was no discussion about, I'd never heard about bisexuality before, and that wasn't something until I realised until I was in my mid-30s. So I kind of feel personally like I've been cheated a little bit in that a whole part of myself that I wasn't aware of, I would have been aware of sooner had it been a discussion about it in school about sexualities. And I think that's why it's so important to discuss different relationships, different families, different sexualities in school, because if you're not represented in your education, if you're not represented, you don't see yourself, there's no reflection of you or your family, there's a huge part of yourself that you miss out. And I think that can have a huge impact on people's mental health and self-esteem. The amount of misinformation out there, especially regarding transitioning young people in school, it's obviously something that's been used as a political pawn and creating this mass hysteria. And I think that's probably quite similar to Section 28, when the media jumped on all these kind of stereotypes and blew them way out of proportion and sensationalised them. And I always say to my pupils when they talk about it, they're worried about the narrative they read in the press and the things that they hear. Anytime there's a big step forward in terms of equality, there's always going to be a backlash. And I think whatever we can do in education to support young people, that is our duty. That's a moral duty. It's our legal obligation to do so. You are allowed to talk about it. Section 28's been repealed. Why would we not talk about it? Because to not talk about it suggests that there's something wrong with it, that we shouldn't be talking about it. And that's completely untrue. We're not just talking about sex. We're talking about people's identities. We're talking about people's families. We're talking about inclusion. So LGBT inclusive education obviously looks at gender stereotyping, sexism and misogyny, and that only benefits everybody because it means that people are not being forced to conform to rigid stereotypes that are damaging, not just girls, boys, but everyone in between. It's not just something that happens in PSHE. These are issues that affect children overwhelmingly every day. Young people, I think, overwhelmingly have a very well-developed sense of social justice and understand when things are right and things are wrong and things are unfair. And that consequently, there's a huge number of young people who are allies. And it's not just within the LGBT community, it's about any social issue or cause. And I think, young people have a very strong sense of what's fair and what's right and what's wrong, and are very intelligent and understand quite clearly people are different and it's totally acceptable, and will advocate very fiercely for their friends. And that's incredibly important. It's having the courage to put your head above the parapet and just get stuck in and be confident in the convictions and say this is the right thing to do. We can't afford to go back to where we were. Right? There's nothing to be gained by going back. We can only move forward.